The 49ers are going to their third NFC championship game in the last 4 years under Kyle Shanahan. What will that mean to his legacy? We're going to talk about that and a lot more on tonight's 49ers Throwback Show with Jack Hammer and Suneil. Hey, what's up? It is Thursday night, and that means it's normally you come on the Thursday night on my channel, and it is time for the Hammerhead Show, but that's not happening tonight. We are finally getting back to the Throwback Show with Suneil. We did that a bunch during the off season, a lot of those shows, and just some scheduling conflicts on my end kind of had forced us to change it around a little bit, but it is great to have Suneil back on the channel. Suneil, how are you doing tonight?
Man, it's great to be back with you, Jack. I know we haven't connected in quite some time, at least on your channel, but it's always good to talk shop with you. And it's kind of, I know we always do that throwback show talking about 49ers history and folklore. Kind of feels like we're in a year that might be historic, that we might be talking about down the line 10, 15, 20 years now, talking about this season. So, it's good to like throw it back and throw it forward all at the same time.
I'm with you on that. I feel the same way. You look at this team and where this team is right now. Like I said at the opening of the show, in 4 years now, this is the third time they've been to the NFC Championship game at least. And I feel like there's some major throwback vibes with where this organization is at the moment in terms of take yourself back to 1981 and what they were doing then. And we're going to get into a lot of that stuff when we get into Kyle Shanahan's legacy. Even have a really cool stat that I'm going to throw out that's going to give you some throwback vibes as well when we start breaking this game down in just a minute. But really quick, before we get there, I wanted to shout out a few folks. We've got our good buddy over here in the comment section, Raphael 5629ers, member of the Toolbox, says good evening, Jack Suneil, members of the Toolbox and everyone. Good to have you on board, Raphael. We have Peter Lee, who actually did my call-in show last week. That was cool to get a chance to talk to him. He says, hey, Jack, Suneil, and everyone, counting down to game day. Can't wait. Niners, is it? I cannot wait for it to be Sunday either. I'm kind of like just counting down how many times I have to sleep before I can show up. Steve-O Supremo says, yee. I'm not sure about this one. Binyam Hameriam says, Philly fans are writing checks that the Eagles can't cash. Bang, bang, Niner game. Oh, I like that one. Good one, Binyam. Hope I said your name right. If I didn't, put it out there in phonetically so that I don't keep chopping it up. I'm horrible with names. I try to do the best I can. You don't want to know how long it took me to learn Suneil's name. We got Kiki K Niners. He says, let's go Niners. And then Armchair QB says 100. Yeah, let's get into it. Suneil, you look at this game coming up on Sunday, and my first takeaway is, why are the 49ers even getting onto the airplane?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously, narratives are made for ratings. Or whatever the case. I mean, this is the game that I expected to happen, Jack. I don't know if you remember in the offseason, I was very high on the Eagles. I knew with the roster that they had, and a lot of the reasons why the Eagles weren't necessarily, kind of well known in the NFC, quote unquote, was because they dealt with a lot of stuff that the 49ers dealt with, which is always having a lot of talent that was injured. And they stayed relatively healthy this season. And, the product speaks for itself. Obviously, they made the huge trade with A.J. Brown. They got Bradbury. They got C.J. Gardner. They made some really good moves. And look, the Eagles are going to be good for a long time because their front office is very, very good. They have 2 first-round picks this year and, are going to be in a good shape cap-wise and whatnot. But, and I always thought this was going to be the game. They're extremely well-rounded. Everything you could pretty much say about the 49ers, you could say the same for the Eagles. And it's going to be one of those games, Jack, where margin of error for both teams are going to be extremely slim. And what I mean by that is both of these teams, usually when they line up against the opposing team, are so much better roster-wise at nearly every position in every position group that they could get away with making some mistakes here and there just because of their overabundance of talent. Neither team is, I would say, head and shoulders talent-wise, like above either. So, 49ers, I think, are obviously number one in turnovers, that defense. The Eagles are number 4, right? So both of these defensive teams, 49 Eagles are number 1 in sacks. 49ers are right up there and the top as well. So both of these defenses are very good and can put up points. Both of these are put up points on defense. Both of these offenses are very good and can put up points. So it's going to be who could play the cleanest game and who's going to dot all their I's and cross all their T's, because the team that makes the most mistakes for sure will lose this game.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing for the 49ers, the one thing, if you point to one specific thing in terms of where they need to be good is in the turnover margin, right? They don't win very often when they turn the ball over more than their opponents. They're actually 1-9 since the start of last year. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head what the number the other direction is. I think it's something like 30-2 right now at this point. It's some crazy number like that when they actually force more turnovers than they give up. So I agree with you. I think this is a really tight game. You look at I know going into it, there's the thought, there's the people that are saying, the Eagles just don't turn the ball over. They just don't turn the ball over. Jalen Hurts doesn't turn the ball over. Well, you look at the numbers, and guess what? Guess which team has turned the ball over more than the other team here? The Eagles. The Eagles have turned the ball over 19 times this season to 17 for the 49ers. The 49ers during their win streak have been really good about the ball. You look at it, and I think there's since the Rams game, that's when this win streak started. They've only turned the ball over 6 times, and it's those 6 turnovers have come in 6 separate games. So they've been very good about that, and you got to knock on wood, but even the quarterback himself, right? The quarterback has gone. I saw a stat the other day: 59 straight attempts without an interception. That's the most ever for a rookie quarterback. The next closest to Brock Purdy's 59 is 14 without an interception. And that goes all the way back to you probably remember this 1948 Norm Van Brocklin. You probably remember that, right?
No, absolutely. I was I was definitely around during that time. No, but Jack, this is a game where Brock Purdy, I think, has been good keeping the ball safe, but some would say, and I would say, there's some throws there that definitely could have been interceptions that weren't, for luck. And every team is lucky, every quarterback is lucky. Like, if you go back into plays, I just know that this is a game where that if he throws the ball in those same type of positions, a guy like Darius Slay is going to catch that ball. A guy like Bradbury is going to catch that ball. The safeties over there are going to catch that ball. He's going up against a very, very good secondary, if not the best secondary in the league. So, I don't think that the 49ers are going to be mistake free, but luckily, they also have a defense that is number 1 in getting turnovers as well. So it's gonna need a full team victory to beat this team, and I think they can do it, but definitely going to be a close game.
I agree, and it kind of on the Purdy interception thing, I saw a video that somebody put together today where it was like all of his near interceptions, right? Since he's and some of those, I'm like, wait, so a guy not going to pass away, that's considered a near interception now in today's day and age, stuff like that. And I don't know. Yeah, you're going to put the ball in harm's way at times. I think every quarterback probably does that. Shoot, Joe Montana did in 1980 in the Super Bowl. Put the ball in the hands of a Bengals defensive back before throwing a touchdown pass on the next play. So I mean, that happens. Every quarterback needs to get some breaks along the way. This belief that you have to be perfect is such a fallacy in a lot of ways, and it's been fun to watch what Brock Purdy's been able to do so far. Purdy's been, I think if Brock Purdy was a first-round draft pick, the narrative around him we wouldn't be talking about this game the way we are. I think if the national narrative of this game would be completely different if Brock Purdy had been taken in the first round. It would be, oh my gosh, look what this rookie is doing, because he's doing stuff that nobody else has done before.
Right.
And so, you start to look at this game, and here you've got a rookie quarterback, but he It's never happened since 1970 where a rookie quarterback has thrown for over 200 yards in back-to-back games. That just hasn't happened.
Mm-hmm.
He's going into a situation on Sunday where no rookie quarterbacks ever won at this game. But the one thing that I think is, and I wrote this yesterday, that is different there is that there's never been a rookie quarterback in his situation either that's been in this position. The other four guys that did this all played for defensive head coaches. Sean King with Tampa Bay, with Tony Dungy, Ben Roethlisberger with Bill Cowher at that time, and then you had Joe Flacco, and that was with John Harbaugh, I believe, and then the most recent one was Mark Sanchez with Rex Ryan. So instead, for Brock Purdy, you have Kyle Shanahan, one of the better coaches in the league at this point. And we're going to get into some more on him in a second. But when you look at this matchup, give me some of your thoughts on the 49ers offensive matchup here.
Yeah, so offensively, obviously this team needs to do what is in its MO, and they're going up against the number one pass defense. So you already know, hey, let's play smart. You know what I mean? So if we know that their pass defense is really, really good, let's not try to test that too much. So let's do what our strength is, which is running the ball, right? So CMC, expect a big game from him. Big game from Elijah Mitchell. Debo, I believe, is going to get, back there as well. And, I think that if they could dominate the ball, time of possession, and, have Brock Purdy playing off of play action versus needing to chuck it up, a bunch of times, it's going to bode well for the 49ers. I think what the worst case scenario is, Jack, is if the 49ers fall into a deficit or fall behind very quickly, and they got to get out of their normal kind of scheme and stuff like that. That's where I think this game could get out of hand. But I think that this offense, obviously, I've been saying TMS, man, too many stars. We have enough weapons. It's just get the ball into our weapons' hands and let them do what they need to do. But I definitely think we need to be a run first offense and have Brock Purdy play off of the run versus, kind of just airing the ball out. Because, like I said, man, the secondary is nasty.
Well, I think this entire defense is pretty nasty. The secondary is really good. Their front four is really good as far as getting after the quarterback, and it's not just their front four. I think they have 5 guys that have 10 sacks somewhere or something like that. They're really good at getting after the quarterback. And so I agree with you. I do think the 49ers ground game is going to be important. We've seen them have a lot of success, though, over the last 12 weeks on the ground. Even when it looks like they've been struggling, they've been doing pretty good there. So I find it. I think you're going to see an offensive game plan that kind of actually where they try to open it up a little bit. I don't think they come out just trying to pound the ball at them. I think you see some throws early on. And there might be some struggles. I think you'll see some screens and those kind of things, very similar to what they did last year. If you remember the game plan last year in week 2, they tried to come out and throw the ball with some quick, easy stuff early on, and Garoppolo struggled with it. But I think you'll see them come back and do that again. It seems like with Kyle Shanahan, his MO was to be more, we're going to use the pass to open up the run because it's just hard to come out just opening up and just pounding the ball away. So I think that's what we're going to see from the 49ers offense. One little thing I want to put out there really quick, and I'm going to put this out in the universe right now. So I know that the Eagles are coming in here with the 3rd most sacks ever in the history of the NFL at 70. That's in the 17 game schedule. So the 2 teams that they're behind are the 1984 Chicago Bears, who had 72, and the 1987 Minnesota Vikings, who had 71. Those both came in 16 game seasons too, remember. You want to know which team beat that 84 Bears team in the playoffs, and which team beat the 89 Vikings in the playoffs?
Tell me, Jack.
That's right. The San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers scored 23 points against the Bears in the NFC Championship game after that 84 season, and they blew the Vikings out in the divisional round following that 89 season as well. So, you can deal with this. I think if the 49ers can get their run game going and they get the ball out quickly, nothing's going to be easy. But I do think that the 49ers can move the ball against the Eagles and put some points up. for sure.
Yeah, funny enough, Jack, you want to see a little bit of Jimmy G out of Brock Purdy in this game because, obviously Jimmy is very elite at getting the ball out of his hands quickly. Brock Purdy, he's not bad at it, but he does try to make some plays sometimes with his legs, and, that might get him in trouble with this defensive line. But I do have a question for you. You're much better at the X's and O's than me. In the last game with the 49ers, it seemed like the offensive line, for the first time, I guess, all year in my eyes, really got pushed around in that first half against against the Cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the second half, it seemed like they, started to play a little bit better. Were my eyes telling me the truth there, or was there something else going on? And also, how does this offensive line prevent? How does this offensive line make sure that doesn't happen in this game?
Well, they were definitely struggling with the speed of the Dallas defense, especially from Micah Parsons, and sometimes on the other side with DeMarcus Lawrence. Even the nose tackle, one of their interior defensive tackles, number 91, that guy was quick as heck. They tried to throw a screen to Christian McCaffrey on one play, and that guy takes off, turns to his right, and chases him down for a gain of only like one or something like that. So it was the speed of Dallas was giving them some trouble. I don't think Philadelphia is quite as fast, but the adjustment that they made was they stopped trying to cut off that backside with like having a guy line up and then get inside of them. Basically what they did to cut off that backside was they started running to the right side, which was Micah Parsons forever. I don't know exactly how they got him to continually go over to the right side of the line, but what they would do is, like, for example, Trent Williams, instead of driving, like coming off the ball like you do on a run to get up in front of him, he was basically just stepping down with his right foot and turning like almost like he was in pass protection, just to keep that backside penetration off. And once they started cutting off the backside penetration, they started picking up yards because all of a sudden now there was room to cut back. In the first half, they were getting across the face too fast, and so there was nowhere to go. Whether it was Parsons or somebody else, there was a play down by the goal line after the interception, for example, where they tried to run to the left side and the dude just beats Mike McGlinchey across his face. Just beats him and is able to make the tackle in the backfield for no gain, instead of it being, a couple yards and maybe even a touchdown. So that was the adjustment they made, was they started cutting off the backside penetration with a couple of different, just with their way that they schemed it up. And it was a big change up that was really nice.
Yeah. And I think like one thing that probably wasn't spoken about as much was the familiarity of Dan Quinn to Kyle Shanahan. So I do think that obviously Dallas has, a lot of talent on that defense, but also Dan Quinn is very familiar with Kyle Shanahan in that scheme. So it makes sense why maybe Dallas defense looked probably even better against the 49ers, because the coach in the scheme might be, might be well known. And then when they made those adjustments, obviously the game changed in the second half. But I don't expect the same type of familiarity with the Eagles defensive coordinator. Obviously, I'm sure they're looking at that game and trying to utilize that game plan to kind of slow down the 49ers. But like you said, I don't think they have the same type of athletes as far as speed. They're more of a power rush, and hopefully the 49ers can hold up to that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. There's some familiarity there with the Eagles coaching staff and like Brock Purdy, for example, from like their defensive backs, assistant defensive backs coach was at Iowa State during Purdy's time there. He was a safeties coach and the cornerbacks coach while Purdy was at Iowa State. So he has a pretty good idea of him. The head coach, Nick Sirianni, he was a college teammate of Matt Campbell, who's the head coach at Iowa State. So there was a lot of communication there. So he's very familiar with Brock Purdy. But that doesn't mean they know what's going to be coming at him necessarily, because they're facing Kyle Shanahan and it's a different scheme. And Purdy might have some of his tendencies, but their offense is different. And so I really like that point that you just made, is the Dan Quinn factor, I think, does play a role in how well Dallas knows what's coming. You don't have that with Philadelphia. I don't know what the score is going to be. I don't expect the 49ers to score a lot of points, but I don't expect them to be anywhere close to what we saw on Saturday night from Philadelphia. against this team, because this is a different team. This isn't the New York Giants.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, NFC Championship games are usually close, regardless. I think this. I think it's only gonna, from history, it says that it's probably only going to be a field goal difference between this game. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be fun. I think this is one of those games that are going to go back down in history as one of the better games in playoff history. Jack, and I've been saying this all throughout the even before the playoffs started. I think whoever wins this game wins the Super Bowl.
I think you're right. I think they're. Well, I don't know. Here's the only reason why I say I stop myself there. The 4 teams that are left are the 4 most complete teams in the NFL, meaning all 4 teams have strong defenses. They all have the ability to rush the pass, to run the ball. They all have schemes that allow them to pass the ball at a pretty decent clip as well. And the reason that's important, like I'm bringing that up, is because Buffalo is a team that was every kind of the darlings, but they don't run the ball. It's Josh Allen or bust, and that's why they're not. That's why they're home right now. That's why they almost lost to the Miami Dolphins in the wild card game, because they don't run the ball. And these 4 teams that are left are really complete. And we were talking in the beginning, the 49ers throwback, talking about old days. And just looking at this matchup between the 49ers and the Eagles, I see a lot of similarities in the 49ers Eagles to like 1992, 93, 94 49ers Cowboys, where they were in those 3 years, those 2 teams were the best teams in the NFC. You knew that they were on a collision course for the end of the year. And I really feel like as from about the middle of this season on, it was 49ers Eagles in the championship game, unless something fluky happened. And then that's when you had Jalen Hurts go down, and it's like, wow, the 49ers have a shot here. But he was able to come back, and they played a bad Giants team at the end of the season. So I think this is one of those games. You look at the matchup; it's very tough on both sides. You look at the 49ers defense, and I think the defensive matchup is really tough here for the 49ers, because you have an offense that just does so many things that it's going to be very difficult on them to stay disciplined.
I think the biggest thing is to understand. So, where I disagree with you as far as the AFC teams, I think they aren't as complete as these 2 NFC teams. I don't think either of those teams has the defense that the Eagles or the 49ers have. And I think their offenses run through having one of the best quarterbacks in the league, right? So, whereas I don't know, sure. I mean, I think Jalen Hurts is building his way through there. Brock Purdy obviously plays amazing in this system. He, yet to put him in that category yet. But I think that when I look at teams that have I always go after the team that I feel like has the most ways to win. And I think the Eagles or the 49ers going up against either of those AFC teams, I would look at them and say they have more ways to win than the other side. Whereas I think if Patrick Mahomes doesn't play a great game, Kansas City isn't winning. If Joe Burrow doesn't play a great game, Cincinnati isn't winning. Their defense isn't going to score points and keep the game close and all that kind of stuff. And whereas I think the 49ers have already shown if the quarterback isn't necessarily playing at a high level, that defense could win the game. I think the Eagles have that same ability. If you shut down the pass, they could win with the run. Those type of things I think that 49ers and Eagles have over the AFC teams, which is why I think that whoever wins this game wins the Super Bowl. I do want to mention something, because I know a lot of the guys in the chat are worried, obviously, about Jalen Hurts' mobility, and rightfully so. Interesting stat that I looked at. So there was 4 games that the Eagles either lost or it was in question whether or not that victory was going to be there when Jalen Hurts was starting. I think it was Arizona, Washington, Indy, and Chicago. In all 4 of those games, common denominator was the leading rusher in that game was Jalen Hurts. And so I think that when you talk about what this defense needs to do is not get caught up trying to stop everything. I think they really just need to focus on let's take away something. And so what I would want them to take away is kind of like not necessarily focus on Jalen Hurts, like we have to stop him. Stop the run. So Miles Sanders, Gainwell, all those guys, Scott, can't get off, like stop the run with their running backs and also really limit the big plays with their receivers. I think if the 49ers can just focus on those two things, I think they'll be in really good shape to keep the Eagles kind of at bay, and their offense could then, put up enough points to get the victory. Because if they try to like focus on stopping everything, I think that's where, it could become overwhelming. But if you just focus on stopping the others and really putting the game on Jalen Hurts' shoulders, I think that the 49ers are going to be in good shape.
I think in order to do what you're saying, it kind of goes back to what I was talking about in the beginning of this. And I agree with you really quick about the AFC teams, what you were saying there. I do.
Mm-hmm.
When I was talking about how these are the four best, it was just because they're the most complete teams in both their conferences.
Right.
In terms of stopping this offense for the Eagles, it's tough because it's a read option, and in some ways it's an RPO. And then there's like an RRPO where it's like I'm going to run, but then I can also run or I can throw. So it's really tricky. So I think you almost have to go into this game like you're playing a triple option team, which means if you've ever, if you go back to when you were playing high school football and you're playing against a team that runs a triple option, this guy's job is to stop this guy's job is supposed to get here. Like everybody has a role. So as soon as they see it going, everybody knows where. It's just read and react. It's super, but it's quick, right?
Right.
And that's, I think, and so that's where I'm saying I think the Friars need to be really disciplined. They need to have really good eye discipline, which they do lack at times. So you got to remember that. But you need to be focused on your role, do your job, and then let everything else go at it. You can't just freelance and be like, I'm going to go get Jalen Hurts right here, or I'm going to go get Miles Sanders, because as soon as you do that, somebody else is going to beat you. So you need to do a good job of being able to part of that, those, like you said, because if you're doing that, you're going to be able to constrict and stop everybody else in the running game, and that's where Hurts is probably pulling it and that kind of stuff. So I like that. That's a really good point.
I think one player on the 49ers defense that can dictate, obviously we know Bosa, you got Fred Warner, Ward. These are all big-time players. But Dre Greenlaw, I think, is somebody who can make or break this defense. He is somebody who's an excellent tackler, Jack, but also somebody that can oftentimes overplay his gap. And if he falls into that kind of situation where he gets overly excited, where he's trying to like just make a play and all that kind of stuff, his gap could be like a big play that he allows to happen behind him. Mm-hmm. I don't think the Eagles have played a linebacking core like the 49ers have, which is going to bode well for them because these linebackers, our corners, are really good tacklers, which is good when you're playing an offense like this, because a lot of times it's the second level that's going to have to stop their players. But Dre Greenlaw, to me, can be kind of, if he has a great game, I think the 49ers defense looks really, really good. If he tends to kind of overplay his gaps and, get stuck in no man's land and stuff like that, it could be a long day for the 49ers as well.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes with Nick Bosa too. I think Nick Bosa as a run defender is underrated. I know he's great as a pass rusher, but I think he's also really good as a run defender. But this is the kind of situation where sometimes he'll struggle in this kind of thing, facing like an option type of a situation. But at the same time, the reason I say this is because you saw him make a mistake last week against Dallas. The one thing that I've noticed about the 49ers, and I think Bosa might have even said this already this week, or he said it at some point maybe last week. But some people keep pointing back to the struggles they had, recently with rushing quarterbacks like Jarrett Stidham, and it's like, hey, we learned our lesson out there. And I think against the Raiders, they just hadn't seen Jarrett Stidham, so they didn't know what to expect. Whereas they're going into this game on Sunday, they're studying everything about Jalen Hurts in this offense. So I think they're going to be really well prepared. I think there's going to be a lot of people who I'm listening to on the radio and who are really making this thing sound like the Eagles are going to be able to just move the ball at will. I think this game's just going to be a brutal contest at the line of scrimmage between both teams.
What do you think the secondary needs to do? Because I think this is one of the most talented receiving cores. that the 49ers are going to be going up against. They are known for their deep ball, and Jalen Hurts actually throws a pretty good deep ball, which tends to be 49ers Achilles heel. How can this secondary make sure, because even last game, even guys like Charvarius Ward, they get beat by speed, and Eagles have a couple of speed receivers. What does the secondary need to do? What does D'Amico Ryans need to be coaching this secondary up on that they don't get beat with that big play?
They're going to take their shots at them, and so they're going to have to be able, there's only so far off you can play because you have to be able to help out and run support and those types of things. So what I would say is I think you're going to see them play very similarly to the way they played against Dallas, which is they're going to give up the underneath throws. They're going to give you some stuff underneath because they're going to try to protect that deep throw. Now, I know that we saw Seattle beat them, but they only beat them once. We saw Dallas beat them, and that was only once too. And one of these with Dallas, at least they had to go 90 plus yards, and they had the one big hit, and then it was 3 and out after that. So, it's basically try to keep everything in front of you, and when you get beat, you got to plan like you're going to get beat. If you get beat, you got to make the tackle before he gets to the end zone, then so you can get to the next down. We saw how that worked out the last couple of weeks, or at least last week we did, and we've seen it other times with this team. We saw it with the 49ers last year against the Eagles. They got beat from deep in their own end. It was a long throw. They tackled the guy at the 5-yard line. How many times have we seen a Philly fan post that on Twitter about how that's going to happen again this week? Like They forgot the fact that they didn't actually score any points on that possession. So, you're going to get beat. So you need to, you just got to plan like you're going to get beat. You're not really thinking, but what is your plan when you get beat? How are you going to stop them from getting to the end zone? I think that's really all that you can do.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be obviously difficult because they have another big-time receiver, like the big body, strong, fast, can do everything receiver in A.J. Brown. And, this playoff run, one thing is that strong, fast receivers getting theirs, right? Metcalf had a game against them when they played Seattle in the playoffs. CeeDee Lamb had a great game. I imagine AJ Brown's going to have a great game, especially because of what's going on in the media around him. That's like a little, is he drama and all this kind of stuff. There's that narrative going on in the national media about AJ Brown. So I expect him to have a big game against, as well, because I do think that they're going to try to get the ball to him. And he's just a great receiver. But none of those receivers necessarily led to where the 49ers ended up losing the game. So that's what I mean, where if they could just stop certain aspects of the offense versus feeling like they need to stop everything, I think they'll be in good shape.
I do too. And there's a couple super chats that I want to hit up really quick, and then we'll get into some Kyle Shanahan stuff. And I apologize to while you put this out a while ago, but thank you for the super chat. It says, Jack, crazy, but if Purdy wins the Super Bowl, he would tie Steve Young. That's right. It's kind of crazy. It is crazy to think about that because of the fact that I think
he would have more than Dan Marino.
Right. If he goes to the Super Bowl, he'd have as many as the guy whose number he wears. That's exactly right. And so thank you very much, Wow. That's a good point out. And then Debuda with one as well. Thank you, Debuda. He says Lenore will have another pick. Remember this. Okay. Lenore's a guy who, for me, I get why people were all over him after that Raiders game because he had a poor performance. But some of the stuff that I was hearing about him wasn't jiving because it wasn't accurate in terms of him getting beat all year and those kinds of stuff because it just wasn't the case. He's just not the big name guy. So people think that he's struggling more than Charvarius Ward, but he was giving up only prior to that Raider game. He was giving up a passer rating that was pretty much the same as Charvarius Ward. He's been playing at a really high level. And it's funny that right after people started getting on him, he comes up with a couple of picks.
Right. Yeah. I mean, before Emmanuel Mosley was Emmanuel Mosley, he was a no-name undrafted, rookie that the 49ers took a shot on. And then he ended up becoming, really, really good player. And I think Lenore has that same kind of mentality where he has that chip on his shoulder and he's always utilizing the negative comments about him as fuel. And, he showed up and, had a pretty good offseason. So, yeah, the secondary hasn't been an issue. And Jack, when have we been able to say that with this 49ers defense where the secondary isn't something that you have to hide?
Yeah, I mean they're not the strength of the defense by obviously, but they're this defense is, as a unit is really good in their ability to just minimize the damage, force teams to beat them by being extremely consistent, and they've done a really good job of forcing turnovers when they've needed them. So Lenore, you mentioned Lenore, from where he came from last year to where he is now, it's been a really nice jump to see how well he's performed because he's been very good since coming in for Emmanuel Mosley. And it's funny you bring up the Mosley thing. I remember in 2019, I wasn't writing at that time. I was just a fan like everybody else. I wasn't. And I remember on the blog that I write for now, in the comments section, somebody was ripping on it because it was going to have to be Emmanuel Mosley. And I was like, ha, ha, ha. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Dude's going to be fine. He's going to step in. And he went in there and he rocked it, So it'll be fun to see how this whole thing plays out. But thank you to Buddha for your super chat. Let's get into the next one because Kyle Shanahan, this is his his third go around with the 49ers. He's been to the Super Bowl before, now twice. He's lost 2 Super Bowls and he's lost 1 NFC Championship game so far. Going into this game, how do you think this game could impact his legacy?
It's interesting to me because it's funny how a Super Bowl win really changes everything. And the reason why I say that is, I don't know if you remember, Jack, but I always comp Shanahan to one coach. And he's the coach over there in Kansas City, and that's Andy Reid. Okay. And when Andy Reid was with the Eagles, he was somebody who got to like 4, I think, NFC Championship games back to back to back to back, and made it to 1 Super Bowl, ended up losing that Super Bowl to New England. He's been now with Kansas City, I think this is their 4th or 5th AFC Championship game in a row. They've been to 2 Super Bowls, won 1, lost 1. But, he's gone to a multitude of NFC and AFC Championship games, only has 1 Super Bowl, but he gets a pass for not, necessarily always making it to the Super Bowl, and not, always, and even losing more times in the Super Bowl that he's won. He's not looked at as anything negative. It's just he's one of the greatest coaches. So, Shanahan is starting to build that, right? 3 times in the last 4 years. He's been to 4 NFC Championship games in the last 7 years because as a coordinator with Atlanta, he has this team and he's on the brink of being able to take his third different quarterback to the Super Bowl. And you look at that and it's just like amazing. And I was listening to, I forget who it was, like somebody Amin or something like that, talking, and they were just trashing Shanahan. Like, if he's so good, why does he always need to do it with like, these no-name quarterbacks or these average quarterbacks and stuff like that? And I was like, trying to figure that out. Like, he's not good because he takes average quarterbacks and he has above average results with them. And that means that he's not good. But it's like, you could get this stuff off. This is this kind of stuff that they used to say to Andy Reid. It's like, but he needs to win before like this nonsense doesn't get spoken about him. Does that make sense? So I think that, this is great. To me, he's cemented himself as one of the best coaches in the NFL. But I think from a national media standpoint, until he gets that Super Bowl championship, they will always be poking, holes in him till he's able to win that. So I think it is major for his legacy. I think if he takes Brock Purdy to the Super Bowl, he'd be the first coach ever to get a rookie quarterback into the Super Bowl. And then if they win that, obviously he's crowned forever. I think he jumps up to probably the top 3 coach in the league if he wins the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, there's a couple of things here. First off, I think that happened on the Dan Le Batard show.
Yeah,
and those guys are a little bit goofy. They push back on narrative. So I don't think they really believe that Kyle Shanahan, what they were saying as far as that stuff. I think that might have been a little bit of them trying to be funny, but poke at people that are negative. But I look at it more as like, I don't think Shanahan really gets a bad rap from the national media. The negative rap on Kyle Shanahan comes from 49ers fans. The 49er fans are the ones who think that he's hard-headed and the guy that, he can't win. The 49ers fans are the ones that were saying that he should be fired just earlier this year. Should have been fired last year at one point as well, and so in terms of winning, yeah, he needs to win a Super Bowl. And if he wins a Super Bowl, his whole thing changes, at least for a couple of years. You know, I just I look at Kyle Shanahan. My thing with Kyle Shanahan is I look at where the 49ers are right now when it comes to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch and Jed Work. It's going to sound crazy. Just stick with me. I think that they're in a very similar situation right now to where this organization was with Bill Walsh. Bill Walsh was the head coach and GM, but he also had John McVay with him too. So he wasn't all on his own, right? He had a guy who was helping him along the way. But if you look at the progression of Kyle Shanahan's time with the 49ers, the one thing that makes him different than Bill Walsh was when he got to the Super Bowl in year 3, which they both did. He didn't finish it off and he lost. Mm-hmm. But he also didn't have Joe Montana, but that's another story. And then the next year was a down year for both of those coaches. The following year after that, guess what? They're both back to the NFC Championship game, losing on the road by 3 points. And right now, Kyle Shanahan's a step away from getting back to the Super Bowl in year 6, which is the time that Walsh got back to his second. So it's really crazy. I really feel like we are reliving kind of the glory years of the 49ers right now. And because we're older, we don't recognize it. You know what I'm saying? Like, at least for me, because I've been through it already, because I was there during that time. It took me a little while to kind of realize where we were. I kind of started to figure it out last year in the second half of the season, kind of what was going on and how just watching Kyle Shanahan, the way that he took that team and turned them around. It was very similar to me to what happened in '88 with that 49ers team when they were flailing, quite frankly, with a bunch of really good players and Hall of Famers. And Bill Walsh had to go in there and turn that thing around. It's wild. At least to me, it is. I don't know.
So, Jack, if Shanahan wins a Super, let's not say Super Bowl. Let's say Shanahan gets to the Super Bowl. Does he automatically jump to number 2 coach in 49er history?
He would be. I think so. I would give Kyle Shanahan. Here's the thing. I would say yes, because the only other coach in 49er history that's been to 2 Super Bowls is George Seifert. But George Seifert got to the first Super Bowl on the back of Bill Walsh's team, right? Mm-hmm. It was basically just Bill Walsh's team that he inherited with Mike Holmgren running the show on offense, and they were able to keep rolling through. I think that George Seifert was a terrific head coach, but I don't think he was going to win if he had taken over, if his first option, instead of taking over a 2-time Super Bowl winning team, was to go to the Los Angeles Rams of that time, I don't think he gets to a Super Bowl. He doesn't even come close to it. And the reason I say use the Rams is because the Rams were the team that the 49ers beat to go to that second Super Bowl, right? So they were a good team in the late 80s, early 90s. It wasn't until around the time when they moved that they started to fall off. So I would say yes, it is. It would be Bill Walsh, and then it would be Kyle Shanahan second.
Yeah, if he wins the Super Bowl, obviously he solidifies himself as a second best. I think it would go him. It would obviously be Walsh first, Shanahan 2. I guess I would put Seifert just because he won a Super Bowl, Harbaugh, and then probably Mariucci would round out my 5th. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think a lot rides on this as far as getting that monkey off the back. And Shanahan wins a Super Bowl, gets back to the Super Bowl, wins a Super Bowl, especially with Brock Purdy at quarterback. I think that he gets a pass. And I don't think it's just for a few years. If you look at Andy Reid, he's continually getting a pass. You know what I mean? Like nobody's ever questioning his coaching ability, even though if you really look at what he's done, he's only won one Super Bowl with as many chances as he's been able to get with the amount of talent he's had on his team. So, and I think rightfully so. I think Andy Reid is one of the greatest coaches. I'm not trying to say he deserves criticism. I'm just saying win one Super Bowl, you're good for life when you're in the type of pedigree as Kyle Shanahan, who's put together a team that is going to continuously be good, right? Like this team is built to be good for another 2, 3, 4 years. And honestly, I think that, the Cowboys 49ers rivalry of the 90s and 80s, Jack, I think it's going to be an Eagles 49er rivalry moving forward, because this Eagles team is set up to be very good for, the next few years as well. So I do imagine 49ers and Eagles are going to meet each other quite often in the playoffs with a lot on the line.
Yeah, I think so too. Real quick, I want to get to this one from Josh James. He says that 88 season was so hard it led to Bill Walsh retiring. I think that that really started before 88. You got to remember, the 49ers won the Super Bowl in 84, and then they didn't win a playoff game for 3 years. They were one and done in 85. They were one and done in 86. They were one and done in 87. Bill Walsh actually tried to resign after the 87 season. It took Carmen Policy to bring him and Eddie DeBartolo back for him to even come back for the 88 year. Bill Walsh's trying times in 88 were because he was trying to screw around with the quarterback position with Steve Young and Joe Montana, and that was really causing issues amongst the team. As Mike Holmgren, said on the Joe Montana documentary, he was Bill Walsh trying to figure out what's going on, and they basically told him, look, you need to pick a quarterback. That's what's holding your team back. And Walsh wasn't even happy about it. He just turned and left the room and came back the next day and said it's going to be Joe Montana. We're going to roll with him the rest of the year. And the season turned around, and the fortunes of the franchise turned around. And so just throwing some old school knowledge at you. And as far as the comment that Seifert doesn't get enough credit, he did a great job when he went to Carolina. He had one season he was 8-8, and he wasn't the next 2 seasons. He was 7-9 and 115. So that wasn't too good. But in terms of the 49ers, the other piece here is the quarterback position. You talked about that. I talked about it earlier too. Brock Purdy in a position here to make some history and become the first rookie to get to the Super Bowl. Do you think he's done enough to become the starting quarterback of the 49ers going into 2023?
Personally, yes. I think he has. And, I'm a big Trey Lance fan, but I think this is Brock Purdy's job to lose at this point. And the reason for it is not because I think Brock Purdy has better physical attributes than Trey Lance, because obviously Trey has a stronger arm. He's faster, bigger, all those types of things. But one thing that we always talked about when I always used to ask you, why is Trey Lance not starting over Jimmy G? Why is Trey Lance, still being talked? Why is Shanahan not just coming out and saying what he needs to say? And it's that Trey Lance never just took the opportunity by the horns and just made everybody understand, I am the starter and this is why I am the starter, right? He had that opportunity against the Chargers in that offseason. Remember, that was the game that they really wanted him to show out, and he didn't show out. He's shown flashes and shown that he's a competent quarterback, and I think he could be successful with this roster as well. But Brock Purdy has taken this opportunity by the horns and proven that he could be the type of signal caller that the 49ers need to be competitive and be able to beat any team in the league. And Trey Lance, whether it be, not his fault with injuries, or maybe he just didn't have the type of experience like Purdy did, playing as long as Purdy did in college, so he was able to pick things up quicker. But Purdy got the opportunity, and I think he's maximized it much more than Trey Lance has. And I think getting 2 playoff wins under your belt, I don't necessarily think he's just going to fall off the map in the NFC Championship game, whether they win or lose. I think he's done enough, and I think he's got the fan base behind him. I think he's got the team behind him. I think obviously Shanahan is able to call a really good game with him as a quarterback. I think it'd be extremely hard for him not to be the starter next season.
Yeah, I agree with you. You look at what he's done. He's come in and he got an opportunity, and it's with anything in life, whether it's you at whatever job you're working, me with where I am, now being able to cover the 49ers, or Brock Purdy, Trey Lance as the quarterback of the 49ers. When you at some point you get a shot, you're going to get your shot, and what do you do with that shot when you get it? Do you make the most of it, or do you let it slip? Right, as the song goes,
Some
and
Eminem bars right there for you.
and Trey Lance hasn't been able to really just take it and run. Um, you know, and Brock Purdy has. And you're right. There's no way that you can say that, like, the the physical specimen that Trey Lance was when they drafted him compared to what Trey to Brock Purdy. There's a reason why Trey Lance was a number 3, number 4 guy in the draft. Why people wanted him at the top of the draft that year, and why Brock Purdy was able to slip all the way to seventh round. You know, 262 or whatever the number was, because there's the physical attributes are there. But the difference is the quarterback attributes. If you were to put these two on a scale, it falls heavily in Brock Purdy's corner in terms of just that ability, like all that experience that he has, all those kind of things. I just the kid plays at a really high level and doesn't screw it up. The turnovers haven't been there. We'll see what happens. Like Harold says, he calls him Brocky Balboa. We're going to stick away from Brocky Balboa because Rocky, he's a Philadelphia guy. We don't like Philadelphia guys this week.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's going to be, obviously, this is going to be well talked about in the offseason because, look, it's not a 49ers offseason unless you're trying to wonder who's going to be the starting quarterback, right, Jack? So, obviously this is going to be a lot of talk for the offseason, but I just don't. I guess the question is, like, does this game matter? Like, how he plays in this game, will that have any effect on how the offseason outlook looks? And I don't necessarily think so. Like I said, I'm in the camp, and this is coming from somebody who's a big Trey Lance fan, as a human and as a ball player too. I just don't see how you take the ball out of Purdy's hands after what he's done over this last 7 games. It's very hard to get playoff wins in this league. He already has 2 of them. His intangibles are just, something that are, you don't see on a stat sheet, but he knocks it out of this park. And, it's something to be said for somebody who is a little bit limited, Jack. I look at Josh Allen, and I'm not saying Brock Purdy is better than Josh Allen by any stretch of the imagination, but Josh Allen has all of these physical attributes that tends to make him want to play, maybe not make the smartest play, because he knows he can make the big play. So instead of taking the short pass that'll get you the first down on a 3rd and 5, he's trying to make the big play that'll get you a touchdown. And if that doesn't connect, now all of a sudden you have to punt the ball instead of keep the drive going. Brock Purdy isn't it because he may not be as physically gifted as some of these other quarterbacks that were drafted above him. He just does the smart thing. He takes what the defense gives him, and it doesn't seem like he has the ego or the need to, like, prove himself by making the big play by overlooking the smart play. And I think that works really well in a Kyle Shanahan offense because he schemes up very easy passes for the quarterback that's willing to take those plays.
Or a quarterback that can see him and hit him and those kind of things. And I felt like I do think that Purdy's done enough. I watched his game against the Cowboys, and hearing people say that he struggled that game is just wild to me. Because yes, he missed some throws. But the dude also completed 19 to 29 passes, threw the ball away 4 times, and had 2 passes that were tipped at the line of scrimmage. So he had 10 incompletions. 4 of those were throwaways. So that means there was only 6 times he threw the ball that weren't, completions. Make sense? And there were a couple of times where he didn't throw the ball, where he scrambled or what have you, that I think he should have thrown the ball. There was, they came back. But and this is where you like what you see from Purdy, because he missed it early in the game on an over route to Deebo Samuel, I think it was. They came back to it later on in the first half, and he hits it to Juwan Jennings to put him in field goal position to put him up by a score of 9-6. So again, he's a rookie. He's going to make mistakes, but he doesn't make them over and over and over again. He might make a mistake, but it's not usually the big one. And he's able to quickly take the advice of the coaching staff and see what he's doing wrong on his own and self-correct.
Yeah. So, it's been fun to watch. And obviously he takes this all the way to the Super Bowl and wins the Super Bowl. The dude will be set for life financially without even signing another big contract in the NFL just from the movie rights and all of the, interviews and blogs and books and, sponsors that he's going to be able to get from that.
Yeah, exactly. So real quick, we're getting to the end here, but NorCal Dan comes in with a super chat. He says, I like both Purdy and Trey. I think Purdy has more of a dog in him, like Suneil said. Brock has confidence. I don't think Trey has yet. Okay. I don't know. I don't know exactly what's inside of Trey Lance's head, but I agree with what you're saying. I do think that Purdy has that competitive, fiery guy. He's that, he's going to go out there and he's going to beat you. He's got that streak in him. So that's definitely, I agree with you, NorCal Dan. Thank you very much for the super chat. You have anything you want to add, Suneil?
No, I agree. Especially when you said, like Suneil said, that's a way to my heart, NorCal Dan. So I appreciate you.
There you go. All right. Let's wrap it up. Before we do, I want to hear what's your prediction for the game?
Yeah, I don't expect a high scoring game. I think it's going to be 24-21. 49ers eke it out in a very hard-fought game.
So you think the Eagles are going to score 21 points on this 49ers defense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to go 49ers. The number I keep coming back to is 20. I think it's going to be 49ers 20, Eagles 17. I think the 49ers have put together 4 scoring drives. The Eagles have 3. I just think that the one thing that I think is really going to work in the 49ers' favor here that maybe some people aren't thinking about is the 49ers are coming off a really tough game. And it was really a wake-up call to face a team that was as fast as Dallas and as good as Dallas. You look at what Philadelphia's played, they haven't played anybody. They played the New York Giants 2 of the last 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't played a really good team in almost a month. And they're going to have the San Francisco 49ers coming in there, coming off of a game that was tough last Sunday. I think the 49ers are going to go in there and they're going to punch him in the mouth early.
And more importantly, Jalen Hurts hasn't been tested since his injury, right? He hasn't been pressured. He hasn't had to test that shoulder out. He hasn't been hit. He's been, relatively safe without that much pressure in the 2 games that he's played, like you said, both against the Giants. To me, I think it's going to come down to the fact that even though talent-wise, there's this thing about the quarterback talent. Jalen Hurts' talent is much better than Brock Purdy's, and maybe the Eagles might have more talent than the 49ers as far as overall team and whatnot. But when you go down to experience, Jack, this 49ers team, most of these players have been here before. This coaching staff has been there before. And we have seen when teams are very evenly matched, that experience in the coaching staff can play a big difference in who actually wins that game, right? And we're starting to notice Kyle Shanahan be a little bit better with his time clock management. You mentioned, what he did at the end of the second half, I believe, or end of the first half, where some people thought his clock management was bad, but it actually ended up being exactly what you would want. Well, you were supposed to have wanted kind of thing, but yeah, and I Jalen Hurts might have more talent than Brock Purdy, but he's had just as many. He's had less playoff wins than Brock Purdy. He's had just as much playoff experience as Brock Purdy, and Sirianni's never been at this level as a head coach, so he doesn't know how he's gonna handle the pressure and all that kind of stuff as well. So to me, I think coaching is gonna be another thing that the 49ers have in their corner, which could make the difference at the end of the game.
Yeah, I think the 49ers are a battle-tested team, really good. They have just a steady, they just have a kind of a steadying calm about them, but they play with a lot of ferocity, and they don't get blown out. Even the game against, I know what the final score was against Kansas City, but that was a one-score game, and the 49ers defense couldn't get a stop, and that was the only time that that's happened all season. So I just really think that this is a game that's going to go the 49ers direction. Calling my shot, 49ers are going to win this thing, and they'll be playing in Glendale in 2 weeks from Sunday.
And I'm saying they win this game, they win the Super Bowl this year, Jack.
There you go. You said that earlier. You started the show off with saying that, so let's end the show with that. There you have it. So real Suneil saying the 49ers are going to win this week, and they're going to be Super Bowl champions. Might be getting a little ahead of himself right there, but I agree with him. I think the 49ers are going to win this week. So you have anything coming up on your channel, Suneil?
Yeah, so tomorrow morning, 9:30 Pacific time, I'm actually having good old Marco. We're going to be streaming on my show, going to be doing a little preview of the Eagles, talk a little bit of front office stuff. You know, Marco is very well tied into the 49ers front office and just, you know, around the league as well. So pick his brain about, you know, what might be going on there and some of the talk about obviously coaching changes and things like that might be going into the offseason. So
nice. Well, everybody, it's in the description. So Real Suneil, So Real Sports Talk TV. That's his channel. So go make sure you get over to Suneil's channel, hit him up, hit that subscribe button over there. Before you leave this one, though, if you can do me a favor, please go ahead and hit that like button. That like button is one of the biggest pieces that you guys can do for us. That helps us out greatly when it comes to our channels. So hit that like button. And then if you're new to the channel and you're not already subscribed, hit that little subscribe button as well and the bell notification so you don't miss any of the shows as we go forward. I'm actually going to be out in Philadelphia this weekend. So I'll be live on the ground at the Lincoln Financial Stadium. Keep it locked into the channel throughout the weekend. I'll be putting together a bunch of stuff from the parking lot, from inside the stadium, doing that for the Press Democrat out there on Sunday. So keep it locked into the channel. I'll be giving you all the information that I can. So make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe, get over to Suneil's channel. And I want to say thanks to everybody for tuning in on Thursday night here, getting ready for the NFC Championship game in a couple of days. It's going to be a lot of fun. Take care, everybody. Thank you, Suneil.